Good afternoon, young leaders. This is Dr. Ashok Vaseashta calling from the United States, and I welcome all of you to this conference of Young Professional Society. I hope you're enjoying the conference. Uh, I would like to talk to you about leadership in a volatile world for young professionals. So, my contact information is in this slide. If you need to contact me, feel free to send me email, and I'll be glad to respond to your emails. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Uh, in all the interviews I took so far, one of the questions I was asked invariably was to define my leadership style. And as you know, there are as many definitions of leadership as there are people, those who have defined it. I've just put two or three folks in here, such as Mr. Bill Gates, who define as leadership as we look ahead into the next century. Leaders will be those who empower others. Warren Bennis said leadership is the capacity to translate vision into reality. Aristotle once said, he who cannot be a good follower cannot be a good leader. I also followed Mr. Gandhi uh, in terms of his advices because he was a great leader. And he once said that you never know what results come out of your action, but if you do nothing, there will be no result. But circling back on Aristotle, he said that he cannot be he who cannot be a good follower cannot be a good leader. I want to recite an example of Mr. Gandhi. He was once approached by a lady who brought her diabetic son, and she wanted advice from Mr. Gandhi to her son not to eat sugar. So she asked Mr. Gandhi if he would advise her son not to eat sugar because he's diabetic. And Mr. Gandhi looked at the lady, looked at the son. He said, "Please, would you be so kind to come back next week?" Lady was a bit puzzled, but she did return the following week. Same thing happened. He said, "Please come back after a week, and then we'll find a solution." She was a bit puzzled, but then again, she returned back after a week. Coincidentally, exact same thing happened again. The third week also, Mr. Gandhi mentioned that, ma'am, please come back after a week and we'll see if we can find a solution. So the fourth week, the lady goes to him, and at this time she was a bit annoyed, but nonetheless, being at his stature, she said that, "Mr. Gandhi, we've been coming here for about 4 weeks now. Could you advise my son not to eat sugar because he's diabetic?" So Mr. Gandhi looked at the kid and he says, "Son, please do not eat sugar because it's not good for you. Since you're diabetic, I think it's not good for your health. So please stop eating sugar." So the lady was a bit puzzled and she asked Mr. Gandhi, "Why could you not tell the same thing roughly about 4 weeks ago?" And Mr. Gandhi looked at the lady and he said, "Ma'am, I've been trying since the day you approached me not to eat sugar myself. I'm diabetic and I eat sugar. And since the time you approached, I've been trying to curb my sugar myself. And up until I can do it myself, I'm not able to advise this young kid. Since I have stopped eating, now I'm able to advise this young kid not to do so." So you have to be a good follower to be a good leader. So I thought that was a great example. Anyway, since we're short of time, I'm going to move on quickly. So while we do not have a set definition for leadership, the example above portrays a leader as someone who has a strong strategic vision and goal, knows how to motivate and mobilize people around that goal, and knows when to listen and follow others who bring their own skill and qualities to the table. I also follow the advices of Mr. Charles Handy. And of course, I have exercised that in my own leadership style, which I'll point out just a little bit later. He once mentioned, whereas the heroic managers of past knew all, could do all, and could solve every problem, the post-heroic managers ask how every problem can be solved in a way that develops other people's capacity to handle it. And this is called distributed intelligence. You simply tap into the resources of people, take a decision, and because the decision came from people, obviously they will follow it. And that I thought was a great example of a leader that you look at the distributed intelligence. Yogi Berra, as I'm sure you know, he was Hall of Famer, and he was known for his one-liners. Difficult not to smile once you listen to those one-liners, but there was a great philosophy behind it. And I'm just going to put only two, three of them here, being so limited in time. He once said that you can observe a lot by watching. You have to watch, you have to observe a lot before you could actually make a decision. Decision is not one size fit all. You have to observe, you have to make lots of observation before you make a decision. Also, when you make a decision, you have to live by it. And being a leader, you have to take a decision. And that's the reason this statement is more relevant today, that when you come to a fork in the road, take it. You, at some point in time, you have to make a decision. And of course, hoping that is the wise decision. He also once said, in theory, there is no difference between theory and practice. In practice, there is. If you look from the leadership standpoint, I think it makes a great deal of sense. Uh, so, as mentioned, although there are many philosophers, those who have said many things, but these are some of the statements which I thought you would find interesting. So, let's look into the current leadership landscape. Organizations of the 21st century are enormously complex, difficult to understand, and even more difficult to manage. There are multiple dynamics individually or in groups, synergistically, and even with diametrically opposite viewpoints, which trigger decision at the workplace. And you have to make a decision based on all of that. Therefore, leadership is more complex now than ever before. Managing and providing leadership is a complex task, especially the fact that constituents may be highly diverse in terms of their social, ethnicity, and socioeconomic background. So, some of the leadership styles which I have followed are as follows, such as distributed intelligence, as I mentioned in case of Mr. Handy, influence networking, relational approaches, self-leadership empowerment, catalyze bottoms-up construction, take engage people in decision making, because once the decision or the parts of the decision come from people and they have to follow that decision, then obviously you will have less competition or obstruction because of the fact the decision came from them. Transformational leadership, delegating responsibilities. You have to delegate responsibility. And once you take that bottoms up approach uh, by delegating responsibility, then obviously decision making becomes much more simpler. So, in the world where we have volatility, we have uncertainty, we have complexity, and we have ambiguity. We call that as VUCA. And in this VUCA world, of course, all the approaches which I've mentioned play a vital role. And I'm sure as you take decision, as a leader going forward, I'm sure you'll be using multiple of these approaches yourself. As a part of Department of Defense project, one of the assignment was to engage complexity science to study human behavior. And one of my consultants used to do uncertainty optimization to study certain patterns and how to interact. Uh, it encourages us to see organization as complex adaptive systems composed of diversity of agents who interact with one another, mutually influence one another, and in doing so, generate novel behavior of the system as a whole. So I also followed uncertainty science and for the uncertain world to see how we can influence decision-making process. So as I mentioned before, that we live in a world which is volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. So we live in a world that is constantly changing, becoming more unstable each day, where changes big and small are becoming more unpredictable, and they're getting far more complex, far more dramatic, and they are happening faster and faster. In terms of uncertainty, it's becoming more difficult to anticipate events or predict how they will unfold. Historical forecasts and past experiences are losing their relevance and are rarely applicable as the basis for predicting the shape of things to come. In terms of complexity, our modern world is more complex than ever. Problems and their repercussions are far more multi-layered and harder to understand. The different layers intermingle, making it impossible to get an overview as how things are related. In terms of ambiguity, one size fits all, and the best practices, these are things of the past. They don't work anymore. In today's world, it's rare for things to be completely clear or precisely determinable. So, as a leader, you have to turn this concept into the concept which is provided here in terms of vision, in terms of understanding, in terms of clarity, adaptability, and agility. So you have to paint a picture of the future you want. In terms of understanding, you have to understand interconnections, make them transparent, reflect on the context, think and plan meta strategically how you are going to start and of course end the result, and you may have to work backwards. You have to clarify, you have to create simplicity, focus on what counts and what it's really all about. You have to create flexibility, agility by scrutinizing hierarchical management techniques. So these are 4 steps going from VUCA. You have to create a vision, understanding, clarity, and agility. So a leadership imperative for the VUCA D is for digital. Of course, we have to integrate the digital aspect into this world. So for leadership, we have to reinvent the leadership, have humility, shared purpose, leaders who create leaders. Engage technology in terms of digital dexterity, uh, build technology resilience, and engage emerging second wave technologies. In terms of strategy, we have to have insight, reimagine the future, purpose, and communicate. In terms of organization, people and culture, we have to excise bureaucracy, empower people, build high performance terms, and transform culture. So I hope this short presentation provides an overview of some of the basic principles of leadership style, how you can convert a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world into a clear, strategic world by strategic decision making. So, with that, I thank you very much for your participation, and I hope that I could convey few principles of leadership. If you should have any question, please feel free to contact me. With that, thank you very much.